Welcome to OnScreen English with Steve Marshall. Lesson 25A is the first of a two-part lesson on modal auxiliary verbs for likelihood. The modal auxiliary verb that you choose to use will depend on the degree of likelihood in the mind of the speaker. Here are some percentages of likelihood. That'll be my sister, she always calls it this time, 99% certain, based on knowledge of habits and routines. That must be my sister, I'm sure, 95% certain. I should pass, I've studied hard. 80% probable, positive expectation. Only use this for things that you hope will happen, so if your uncle's dying, I don't think you should say he should die. It can rain a lot in London in April, 75% probable, a recognized feature of London. May, might and could represent possibility. If you deliver the letter now, she may be in her office. 50% possible, more formal. She might be in her office. 45% possible. She could be in her office. 40% possible. These percentages are just my opinion, they're not scientific. Likelihood can also depend on your tone of voice, body language, etc. Here's the form for modal auxiliary verbs of likelihood in the present. Certain in the affirmative. That'll be my sister, she always calls it this time. That must be my sister. In the negative. That won't be my sister, she never calls it this time. That can't or couldn't be my sister. For these two negative forms, the speaker is thinking, I'm sure it's not my sister. Probable. I should pass the exam, I've studied hard. It can rain a lot in London in April. You shouldn't fail the exam, you've studied hard. It tends not to rain a lot in London in August. There's a small star next to shouldn't because it can be a bit confusing because it's often used for obligation. Possible. If you call her now, she may, might or could be in her office. Negative. If you call her now, she may not be in her office. If you call her now, she mightn't or she might not be in her office. So the may, might and could examples all mean I think it's possible she's in her office. And the negative forms, I think it's possible she's not in her office. But remember the negative form of could here has a different meaning. It means certainty rather than possibility. Let's move to the past and certainty in the affirmative. That'll have been my sister, she always calls. That must have been my sister. And in the negative, that won't have been my sister, she never calls. That can't or couldn't have been my sister. The two sentences mean, I'm sure it wasn't my sister. Probable. I should have passed the exam, I studied hard. He could be quite annoying when he was a kid. This form of could is often used to describe characteristics of people. Negative. You shouldn't have failed the exam, you studied hard. It tended not to rain in London 50 years ago. Possible. In the affirmative, she may, might, or could have been in her office. These three sentences mean, I think it's possible she was in her office. And the negative, she may not have been in her office, she mightn't or might not have been in her office. These two mean, I think it's possible she wasn't in her office. Remember again that the negative form of could for possibility can only be may not or might not, as couldn't refers to certainty. Now for the future. Certainty. If someone calls at 10 p.m., that'll be my sister. If someone calls at 10 p.m., it won't be my sister. Notice there's no must form for future. Nor is there a can't or couldn't form for future. Probable. I should pass next week's exam. I studied hard. You shouldn't fail next week's exam. You studied hard. Notice that there is no can form for future, nor is there a tends not to form for future. Possible. She may, might or could be in her office later. She may not be in her office later. She mightn't or might not be in her office later. You cannot use could in the negative for future possibility. Thank you, that's all for now. If you'd like to see part 2 of this lesson, OnScreen English Lesson 25B, Modal Auxiliary Verbs for Likelihood, please click on the link.